welcome to another episode of Nice Doing Business with You podcast. Today we welcome Michael Halperin. He's the first EOS implementer in Pittsburgh. For those of you that are unfamiliar, EOS stands for the Entrepreneurial Operating System. It's based on the book Traction by Gino Wickman, which both of us have read at least once. It's a practical business framework that helps companies gain clarity and accountability by aligning leadership teams around 6 key components: vision, people, data, issues, process, and of course, traction. Michael has a long and varied career working for a number of companies of various sizes, ranging from Fortune 50 to startups. He started his first company in 2009 and since then has co-founded 4 additional companies. He was the CEO of Apogee IT Services, and he led that company to grow from under $5 million in revenue to over $14 million in revenue in less than 13 years?
3 years.
3 years.
3 years.
I read that wrong. Yeah, that's a big difference. 5 million to 14 in revenue.
Felt like 13 years.
3 years. That's very fast. We'll talk a lot about that. While he was at Apogee, he implemented EOS, and in 2017, he joined the EOS worldwide community. Since then, he's worked with over 80 companies and delivered over 600 full-day sessions as an EOS implementer. In 2024, he became the first implementer in Pittsburgh to earn the designation of Expert EOS Implementer, the highest designation in that community. He now lives in harmony with his wife, Mary. He's interested in music, been in several bands, and currently records under the name Cranberry Jam. Michael, welcome.
Thanks,
you.
Chris.
Awesome to have you.
Nice to be here.
Yeah. So where do we dive in? I always like to start off with how you found yourself becoming an entrepreneur and hear that story, because it's always kind of a fun one. Most people don't start out saying like, I'm going to start a business today, you know?
I kind of did.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, I was working for a company. I was their chief technology officer. And as we like to say in the terminology of EOS, I was right person, but I was wrong seat. Okay. And we came to an agreement that this was not the right place for me to be, and I left. And the next morning I woke up and looked myself in the mirror and said, you know what? You've become a lousy employee. And it's time to do something I'd been thinking about for a long time, which is to strike out on my own. And I literally had no idea what I was going to do, but I knew it was the right move for me. So that's how I started becoming an entrepreneur, and just kind of stumbled my way into another company, which was an M&A company. I had no background in M&A, but as I like to say, I accidentally started a mergers and acquisitions company, and that's how I learned how to do that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So that was your first business, was doing M&A?
Well, that was the second business. The first was the business that I have right now. The name of the business is FreeBridge.
Okay.
And the way I came up with that name is that same day that after looking myself in the mirror and said, it's time to start this new chapter, I was literally walking down the stairs to breakfast and said, this is my bridge to freedom. And bridge free sounds dumb. So
FreeBridge.
FreeBridge, that's where the name came from.
Okay, awesome. And that's the name you use now for your...
That's the name I use now.
EOS
I operate under the brand of EOS Worldwide, which the EOS community has allowed us to do. But my company, if you look under the covers, is called FreeBridge.
Right, which I'd seen that before, I think when we did a project or two together. So what was FreeBridge on day one?
FreeBridge on day one.
Pre-EOS, I'm assuming.
On day one, it was a question mark.
Okay.
I knew I was going to be a coach and a consultant. I wanted to work with other people, but I wasn't exactly sure what my area of expertise was going to be, because I have a background in process. I also have a background in IT services. So I tried doing both, and I got more traction on the IT services side. So started consulting with IT services companies, and we had a struggle because, hourly consulting is hard to sell to small companies. And I met a guy who was an M&A expert focused on IT services, and his problem was he could find all of the companies he needed who wanted to buy and sell. But once the deal was done, he got sucked into the integration, and that was not his forte. So we had a conversation, and it's like, hey, your chocolate and my peanut butter, they go together pretty well. So it became a good business model for us to do the operational side following on to the M&A.
So you were the integrator in that relationship, I assume?
I was the integrator. There were 3 of us, so everybody did a little bit of everything. But
so you'd come in and try to get IT companies that were separate entities to start working together?
Yeah, we would find companies that were interested in growing by acquisition, and we would do it was a full service. We would go out and do the search for them. We would negotiate the deal for them, would do all the paperwork for them, and then once the deal was done, would help them integrate in. It was a really good model. In fact, the company is still around. It's called Cogent Growth Partners, based out of Atlanta,
Awesome.
and they've been around since 2009.
So how many companies did you help roll up in your work there?
While I was there, we probably did 8 or 10 transactions, but I know they've done many, many more since then.
Wow. What did you start to see any trends or patterns as these different companies were coming together? Because as you know, we've merged with a few really small agencies over
Mhm.
the years, and each one's kind of it's different. Has its different ups and downs and unexpected surprises.
Yeah, for sure. It's the human aspect, right? It's
Yeah.
culture. It's culture. You're taking 2 companies and you're bringing them together, and for a company to be able to do acquisitions well, they need to have a strong culture. And you need to bring in a company that's gonna align to that culture. And this is one of the important lessons, hard lesson that I learned with Apogee, because we were growing by acquisition. That's how we went from 4.7 million to 14 million in less than 3 years. And there was one company that we brought on that we spent a lot of time doing hey, here's our culture and here's our core values. And they're like, wow, that's a perfect fit. And then once we did the acquisition, it's like, oof, it's not as perfect of a fit as we thought it was going to be.
Hmm.
So that would be the advice I'd give to anybody who's doing an acquisition. One of the things that I learned doing the M&A, and anybody who's really got a good background in M&A will tell you this, about 50% of M&A projects don't go very well. It's a very low hit rate, and it's the cultural aspect that's a big piece of that.
Interesting. So being a process guy, I would think that you would have gravitated more towards like, well, our processes and your processes are very different. How do we integrate those or get them to gel?
That's also part of the issue. You have to find out what you are going to integrate and what you're not, and there's different models there. There's a lot of companies have been very successful just doing the roll up, which is, we're going to own all these companies, but you just keep doing what you've been doing. And
Right.
integrating on paper is more efficient because there's economies of scale, but the reality is getting there can be really, really tough, especially in the IT services industry where you got various platforms. It's not the processes, it's the technology.
Yeah.
It's often the sticking
We've had
point.
some clients we've worked with, and it's fun business for us because each time they do another acquisition, if they're going to keep them separate entities, it's not as fun as if we're going to cherry pick out like, okay, tell me about your business use cases on what are the products and services you're most excited about and you want to capitalize on, which ones are you going to let go? And then, do the research of like which pages of that site rank, which ones don't, and make a plan to migrate content and
Mhm.
sort of step it out each time. But I never understood. We have one actually right now where they're keeping every company separate, right? Like they're all going to keep doing their own thing, but they are sharing some resources and customers, if they have
Mhm.
a complementary services, that sort of thing. But I would think that there's just so much more margin you can expand on when you have all those overlapping expenses, when everybody's on the same payroll company, same benefits, same attorney. That's why I don't get it when these big PE firms buy all these companies but keep them separate. What's their end game?
Well, for the PE companies, it's just the growth of the revenue, and, if you grow revenue and you maintain reasonable EBITDA margins, then, you increase the value of the entity, and for the private equity company, the end game is get in, then
Right.
get out,
They're
right?
going to sell it as a package,
You
sell
got
it
a
as a package.
you got a 5 to 7 year runway usually with a private equity company. I was private equity backed when I acquired the platform company for Apogee, and our thesis was to integrate. And, so we went in with that plan. The
Yeah.
the other is much, much more capital intensive, but the integration is a lot more labor intensive.
Got it. So when you were at Apogee in that 3-year period, when you basically almost tripled revenue, more than about triple.
More yeah.
So, how many integrations did you do in those 3 years?
We did 3. We did
Wow.
3 acquisitions along the way, and they were in different markets. One was in a different country. That was interesting.
Wow.
So, yeah, and, I joked when you were introducing it, it was 3 years, but it felt like 13. It was hard.
A lot of work, a lot of
Yeah,
long days.
and that's actually really the beginning of my EOS story, is that I was working 70 hours a week. I couldn't keep up, and, you talk about that, and it sounds like you're bragging, "Ooh, 300% growth in 3 years." It was horrible. It was painful. I went 9 months without having a day off. I don't mean, you know, Monday through Friday. I'm talking 4th of July, Memorial Day, Labor Day. I mean, and I was just falling further and further behind. So a friend of mine gave me the book Traction, and that's how I was introduced to EOS. So we implemented EOS ourselves, and it was a game changer.
Okay. So when you self-implemented, that's difficult to do because we tried it.
Well, we didn't.
Did you oh, you used an implementer?
I used
Okay.
one of the, we call them the 8 OGs. So one
Okay.
of the original implementers that learned from Gino. Well, most of the implementers at the time I joined were learning from Gino, but he was one of the original implementers. He was out of Philadelphia because there was nobody in Pittsburgh. So, he made us travel to Philadelphia
All
to
right.
work with him.
I didn't realize you actually used an implementer yourself. It's like learning jujitsu from a Gracie.
Mhm.
That's like he's pretty far up there, 1 degree of separation from Gino himself.
Yeah.
Have you met Gino Wickman?
Yeah, many
Many
times.
times you've
Yeah.
been to some they have a conference now, right? Annual
Well, there's
conference?
an EOS conference that happens once a year, and that's open to, really any company who's either running EOS or EOS curious. And I've been to a few of those conferences, and they've been really, really good. But in addition to that, 4 times a year, the EOS implementer community gets together. 3 times a year, it's regional, and I go to Detroit. And then once a year, it's all 900 of us in one place. We just did this in Orlando in February. Gino's he doesn't go to all of the regional ones, but he lives in Detroit. So that's the one I go to. So I've,
Nice.
one time sat down at a table and go, oh, here's an open seat, and just sat down and, oh, there's somebody already here. Hope he's nice. Turned out it was Gino. So I got to spend a QCE sitting next to Gino.
That's fun. So you started EOS in what year? With when you were doing it, like when you went through the implementation
Yeah.
of
So we
Apogee?
started 2015
Okay.
is
So
when
I think
we began.
we worked with you to do EOS at our agency in 2018.
Right.
So, and I think you had fairly recently exited
Oh,
Apogee at that point, right?
yeah. I left Apogee in July of 2017
Mhm.
and then took the time off to decide what I wanted to do with the next and what I am planning on being the last chapter of my career. And immediately I heard from a lot of M&A people. And so there were some opportunities there. But, I just looked at it, and given that track record, the number of failures, it always creates wealth. It creates wealth for the lawyers. It creates wealth for the accountants. It creates wealth from the seller. It creates wealth for the investors, but it doesn't usually work out all that great for the employees and the customers. And I'm like, is that what I want for the last chapter? But I just kept coming back to this EOS thing. I'm like, this thing really works. I mean, the impact that this had on my business and other companies that I had found that were running on EOS, I'm like, I think this is it. I think this is the thing I want. I want to help other entrepreneurs avoid the pain that I had gone through at Apogee.
Right.
And that's when I made the decision. So I went through what we call boot camp in November of 2017. And I was a rookie when I started working with you. You were one of my very first clients.
Yeah, I remember those days, but it was super cathartic for us too. I mean,
Mhm.
just pretty quickly, it just gave us more structure to our meetings, forced us to kind of look at like measuring what matters with the scorecard. And we still to this day, like we might not be what you would call pure EOS, but we're damn close. Like we're very close to pure EOS. We actually just had our L10 a few hours ago.
Oh,
We do
good.
it on Monday mornings. So,
I actually did mine this morning.
and we have a quarterly coming up at the end of the month. So,
Good.
so when you first started with EOS implementing it at Apogee, what were some of the big things that you focused on? Like, what were some of the challenges you had at the time, and how did it help you kind of
The
stop working those 70-hour weeks?
Yeah, the biggest challenge that I had was getting my leadership team aligned. And that's something that EOS is spectacular at, helping us define the vision in a really simple but complete and powerful way. So we got really, really aligned around the vision, and then making sure we had the right people in the right seats, starting with that leadership team. And we did find out that we had a little bit of a disconnect there. It was not reparable, and that was tough.
So, how did you address that? I guess you had to give someone some walking papers at the time.
Yeah, yeah, you have to, when you find somebody who's either not the right person, they don't fit the culture, or they're not in the right seat, you've got to have the conversations open and honest
Mhm.
and try to help them make the trip. And those who can make the trip will let you know because they will. But those who can't will let you know because they'll do it for a while and then they won't. And then they'll do it for a while and then they won't. And about the third time they've slid down the hill, they're telling you, listen, I'm trying as hard as I can. I just can't do it. It's not who I am. And at that point, you got to make the hard decision.
Got it. So there's actually an exercise, I believe, in the toolkit for RPRS, correct?
The people analyzer,
Get it, want it, capacity to do it.
and also a plus, plus, minus, and minus on the core values.
See, I remember. We
Yeah.
still look at these things. So when you did the analysis on your leadership team, is that something that played out over time? And I have to ask, did you feel like you knew that was coming, or did it
Um,
surprise you?
it surprised me a little bit. I'm an eternal optimist, and I thought we're going to get everybody on board. And what I found out to start was that the team was not as aligned as I thought they were. I mean,
Okay.
the whole team, but it didn't really take us that long for us to get really, really tight. I mean, really tight, very, very aligned, with one exception.
Yeah. No air between the shoulders, as you like to
No
say.
light between the shoulders.
Or no
That's
light
it.
between the
No
shoulders.
light between the
That's what
shoulders.
yeah, I was close. Okay, so once you made that decision, I assume you get more alignment. What would you say were the first kind of really big steps that helped you get your time and sanity back after you kind of reassessed the team?
It was, well, it was a couple of things. Getting ourselves aligned around the vision, sharing that vision, finding out who within our team was willing to support that vision. And when I say our team, I mean the whole organization. And the core values, that was huge. Rolling out those core values, and the people who aligned to those core values and fit those core values, they were just like right at home. And then there were others who maybe weren't quite there, but figured out how to make the trip. And then there were some that yeah, it's just not who I am. And
Yeah.
what's really, really interesting about that, your core values are taken hold when somebody comes into the organization and then they self-select not that long after coming in. And we're looking at them and going, I'm not sure this person's really a fit. And then a couple of days later, they come in and go, you know what? I don't think this is the right place for me, and I'm going to move on.
Yeah. Interesting. So shortly after you did EOS, was that before or after you had done some mergers at Apogee?
We had done 2 of the mergers before we started
Sorry.
implementing
So you
EOS.
had one more that happened afterwards. Did that one go smoother as a result?
Way, way, way smoother. And one of the things that we did was I knew much better how to look under the covers at the core values. And there was another one that was on the table that ended up going sideways. And it was in large part because, yeah, they really just don't fit the way that they needed to. But this other company that we got which ironically was in Canada. And I asked my private equity companies, I said, do you know how to do an acquisition in Canada? And they're like, we'll figure it out. And when they said, we'll figure it out, they meant, I'll figure it out. But it actually went really well.
Okay.
It was a great company and great people.
So at the sort of latter part of your time at Apogee, how big was the team?
When I joined Apogee in 2014, when I first came in, we had, I think about 19 or 20 full-time people and a few part-timers. By the time we were done with, when I left, we had 75.
Okay.
So that's pretty significant. I mean, that's a lot of growth.
Right.
And, as we call it in the
Multiple
EOS world,
locations.
multiple locations. We talk about in EOS hitting the ceiling. We went through the ceiling a bunch of times. I like to joke, I went through it face first a couple of times.
So by the end, I assume the leadership team grew in size. How big was it in your last few days?
It didn't actually grow that much.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we went from, I think, we started out with 4 and we ended up with 5, but different people.
Yeah, I would have assumed that some of the senior leaders in each of those 3 companies would have joined the leadership team.
Mhm.
But that didn't work that way.
No, one did.
Yeah. Interesting. All right. So once you left Apogee and you kind of had your FreeBridge epiphany moment to start, well, you kind of had the FreeBridge moment before that, right? But you had your epiphany moment to become an implementer full time. How'd you start to build that business? Because I happen to know you're booming these days. We have a lot of mutual clients. I bump into you at all the same social circles lately. So, what do you attribute that to? Do you think it's just word of mouth from doing a great job, or
yeah, it was hard to start because I was the only guy in Pittsburgh.
Yeah,
and I'm not a particularly great sales guy, biz dev guy, so I was just out meeting people, talking to people, and trying to get people to understand what it was. I handed out a whole bunch of copies of the book Traction, just trying to get people to understand what EOS was all about. So it was a pretty slow go for probably the first year.
Yep.
And then after that, something kicked in and It just started growing from there in 2019, just in time for a pandemic, which was a little bit of a step back. But now where most of the companies I'm working with are coming from now is it's people like you who've done it before, understand it, appreciate it, know me, and say, listen, you got to go talk to Michael. So
Right.
that's where most of it's coming from.
And how many implementers are there in Pittsburgh now? I know there's at least 2 or 3 of you that I know.
Yeah, I
Of.
think there's 6 now.
6.
Yeah, we
Okay.
just brought on 2 more, both of whom are former clients of mine.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I've worked with you and Lloyd
Mhm.
before he became an implementer, and I thought that was interesting because he also obviously was in the IT business. So pretty
Yeah,
cool. He's
I was
great too,
in
I hope.
so funny story about Lloyd. Lloyd and I were I ran at the time, the biggest IT services company in Pittsburgh, and his company, Wolf Consulting, was number 2.
Yep.
So we were top competitors, and yet we would get together a couple times a year. It was a very friendly
I call them
relationship.
frenemies.
Yeah,
Yeah, I have a
and
few of those here in town too.
I actually recruited him to be an implementer because she also implemented EOS in
Very
his
cool.
company. And
He's a great guy.
yeah, he is a great guy. He was the second guy in town.
So now you've been at it for 6 years, 5, 6
8,
years? 8?
just had my 8-year
I
anniversary.
guess it is 2026 now, huh?
Yes, it is.
Time
Hard
flies.
to keep track of.
Where's it go?
You're telling me.
So how many companies do you think I know it says you've done over 600 full day sessions, but is that how many companies you've worked with? Around 600?
No, I've worked with 80 something, 82, 83 companies.
Okay. Cause they
And
do a full day session every quarter,
Mhm.
right? Yeah. That's still quite a few. And if you think about like the job satisfaction, I was thinking earlier when you were talking about like, wanting to maybe go do PE, but you don't love the outcome for all stakeholders versus this. You've got to have so much job satisfaction every day when you see these business owners who are running around like chickens with their heads cut off that all of a sudden have that clarity and a good plan and everybody's bought in.
it is extremely satisfying for me when I get a company to that point. We call it the EOS life. This is actually a book that Gino wrote. The EOS life is doing what you love with people that you love, making a huge difference, being appropriately compensated, and still having time in your life for other passions. And there are clients that I worked with that when I started working with them, I'm like, what are your pain points? And it's the business can't do anything without me. I am the hub of the wheel for the entire company. And it's exhausting and it's scary because I'm not immortal. And now they're investors, letting somebody else run the company. They're in the company maybe 8, 10 hours a week and living the life that they want to live, making more money than they've ever made. So, when you see that kind of a transformation happen in the company, that's what gives me my energy.
That's pretty awesome. So do you ever get the sense, I'm sure when you've worked with enough companies, you can kind of sense sometimes like this one's not going to work well, or this one's going to fight me tooth and nail, but maybe we can get over the hump. Do you kind of does your spidey sense usually prove you right?
Generally, there's times where it's like, the question I ask myself is, can I keep them within the boundaries enough that they can actually do EOS? And some of them, the answer is no. And then the other is, there's glitches here and there's some imperfections, but are they going to be better with it or without it? And if the answer is they're going to be better with it, then I try to work with them. But there have been a few that, the first thing we do when we meet somebody who's interested in EOS, we call it the 90-minute meeting. And they come to my session room, which is in Wexford, and I take them through what EOS is. And there have been a couple of times where they just ask me enough off-the-wall questions about, well, we're going to do it this way, and we're not going to do that, and we're going to. Then I'm like, you know what? Here's the book. Go do what you want to do, but this isn't going to work working together.
Yeah. Well, you're also at the kind of point in your career where you want to work with the people who are going to do what they need to do to get the full value, right?
Yeah.
You're not afraid to walk away.
Yeah. It's like I tell my clients this. I say, saying no to somebody who's not target market requires 2 things. It requires conviction, because it's not normal human behavior to walk away from an opportunity, but it also requires pipeline.
Right.
Because if they're the only one standing in front of you, it's a lot harder to say no to them than if there's somebody standing right behind them.
Yep. I saw a quote once I think it might have been at a sales workshop that I did. It said something to the effect of, your ability to say no to a bad opportunity is only as strong as your pipeline.
Absolutely.
That one stuck with me.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Maybe it was you that said that to me.
I'm not that eloquent. I don't think I would have said it that way.
So 600 full day sessions. That's a ton. What, I wanted to ask, Aside from being able to kind of, identify this isn't going to work, when you are working with a company closely and it is starting to pick up, what would you say are the things that they do well or that set them apart in the EOS process? And I'm assuming a lot of people who are going to watch this are somewhat familiar with
Mhm.
EOS. We kind of skipped that part, just talking about what the system is and how it works. But
Well, let me answer both of those.
yeah,
So when people ask me, "What is EOS? What does EOS do?" EOS is a time management system, making sure that you're focusing your energy on the right things and getting them done as efficiently as you can. And it is also a system for aligning human energy, getting everybody rowing in the same direction. And the way we do that is with three things that we refer to, we call them vision, traction, and healthy. So vision is about alignment. It's about getting first the leaders of the organization on the same page where you're going, how you're going to get there. Traction is about execution, executing with discipline and accountability to make every piece of the vision real. Healthy is bringing them together as a healthy, functional, cohesive leadership team because as you've probably seen, a lot of times they're not. Once we infuse that vision, traction, healthy to the leadership team, we teach them how to cascade it to the whole rest of the organization, ultimately get to the point where everybody in the organization is crystal clear where the business is going, how it's going to get there. Everybody is executing, being held accountable. The entire organization moves forward as a healthy, functional, cohesive whole with everybody focused on the greater good. So that's what we do. And to answer your first question, the most interesting and the critical success factor of those three, vision, traction, and healthy, is healthy. And that is the long pole in the tent, and it's the hardest part of the journey, is trying to get that team to work together, being completely open, completely honest, vulnerable with each other. And that's hard. And a huge piece of my job is getting to know that team and understand where they're willing to go and where they're not willing to go on their own, and then helping them continue to expand, as I like to call it, expand that circle so that there's more and more things that they can talk about openly and honestly. That's that's probably the hardest and I think maybe the most important part of my job.
interesting. So you would say that one of the main things that helps you assess if they're going to be successful is just that team chemistry, team healthiness, how well they're getting along.
I would say that if I'm learning, if I'm just meeting a team, it's not so much a factor in do I want to work with them as where do I think they really are right now? And you really can read just from some of the things, even in the 90-minute meeting, some of the behaviors and some of the ways that they speak and who is deferring to whom. You get a sense for how open and honest this team is. But as I always tell them, I was like, every leadership team starts where they are.
Mhm.
And then from there, it's progress.
So if you're talking to someone who's curious about EOS or interested in it, have you started to notice any trends or patterns in like what they're typically ask, like where you can best help them or what,
Well,
who's the most primed and ready to go and will be a good fit?
yeah, in some ways, it's like anything else. They're in pain,
Mm.
and this is a solution to their pain. And if they're not in enough pain, they're just going to continue doing what they're doing. But when they get to the point where that pain is significant enough to say, you know what, we got to do something different. That's exactly where I got with Apogee and say, what we're doing isn't working. We got to do something different. We refer to that as hitting the ceiling. So there's inflection points in business. It's going to happen again and again and again. Sometimes it's about how big you are. Sometimes it's about, you can't scale your business. Sometimes it's your processes aren't where they need to be. Sometimes it's you don't really understand what's happening in the business from the data standpoint, but there's something or other that's got you stuck
Yeah.
and you've tried lots of things and you can't get unstuck.
I was going to reword the question because I was a little ambiguous, but basically, like, what are the symptoms that you're looking for where you can help them the most? And I think you got to the answer. It's they're hitting the ceiling, they're feeling stuck. But
Hmm.
if you think of it in terms of pain and symptoms, like what are the things that like stand out to you as like, ooh, EOS would really help you? Sometimes, like when I give you referrals, it's just because I can tell it's a dysfunctional team.
Hmm.
Back to what you said, like not necessarily like toxic, but like they're just not on the same page. Like
Right.
we're talking to different stakeholders via different meetings, and they clearly didn't speak to each other between the meetings. They're unsure what they should be working on. And I'm not bagging on all my clients, but we have a few like that. And some of them are still with us, some of them aren't, where you can just tell like EOS would be really good for you. and
Yeah.
and then they talk to you, and I think that's the main thing that's jumped out at me as a symptom, like, this team's not clicking on all cylinders, but what are some of the other less, visible ones?
Well, that's definitely one of them for sure, Chris. But typically it comes down to a couple categories. One is people. We can't find the people that we want. Our people don't feel like they're motivated. Our people aren't being held accountable. Our people aren't engaged. We're having turnover. So the people thing is probably number one. Then growth is the other. And it's both ends of the curve. It's the ones that aren't growing at all, but used to be, and they're like, why are we stuck? And then the other one are the ones that they're doing a great job of growing, but they're outgrowing what they have. And they're
Okay.
concerned they can't scale the business fast enough to keep up with the growth. Another is, and you see this a lot, with, well, a lot of businesses, but family businesses sometimes. It's like we are working our tails off here. And we're just, I mean, revenue's okay and we're profitable, but the profit that we're getting is not aligned with how hard we're working, and we wanna try to grow that profit. So those are some of the things that we see. When I hear those things, I'm like, "Okay, this is a really good conversation." I met a company just a couple weeks ago, growing like a weed, and they've got to the point it's like, you know, we just don't have the systems and the structures and the things that we need to communicate, align our people, make sure everybody's working together. That's that's a great case for EOS.
Have you ever worked with a company that started to run, like, departments through L10s and EOS? Like, not just their senior leadership team, but also, like, other functions within the business?
Well, that is the goal with every company is that, when I said before, vision, traction, healthy, you cascade that down. So all those tools will cascade. It's usually on the leadership team to do that. So the members of the leadership team, it's like, okay, you're running finance. Now you're going to have a L10 and cascade rocks and scorecard to the finance team, and you're running operations. You're going to do it with the operations team. You're running marketing and sales. You're going to do it with that team. There was only one organization I worked with that was large enough that I actually ended up working with. They were in divisions
Yeah,
that were pretty
you
up,
worked with
and
all
I
the
ended up
divisions.
working with each of the divisions too.
That's interesting. So, how often does a lot of the obviously the folks we work with in our relationships really around sales and marketing? Have you seen any trends with sales and marketing departments, or any success stories where that you've heard of working with EOS? Aside from the clarity they get when their leadership team has a clear vision and marketing
Yeah,
targeting all
I think
dialed
probably
in.
the primary thing in sales is just accountability and learning how to hold salespeople accountable. And part of it's the sales management, because the huge mistake that a lot of companies make is, well, my sales manager left, so I'm going to take my best sales guy and I'm going to make him my sales manager. And you get smacked on your head with two hammers on that one. Because number one, you just promoted a guy who may not be a very good manager. And number two, you just took your best sales guy out of territory. So so that's a piece of it too. But then once you've got the right sales manager, and it's not just sales and marketing, it's everywhere in the organization, accountability is a challenge for
Mhm.
almost every organization. And that is one of the things that I think EOS is excellent at, is teaching people, how do you first decide what are you going to hold people accountable for? What are the expectations? Then how do you communicate those expectations? Then how do you provide them the feedback and sometimes the discipline that they need in order to live up to those expectations? So that's a big piece of it. And that goes for sales, but other parts of the business as
It's
well.
awesome advice. So, what didn't we cover about EOS that you think people should know about you or the program or how you work?
You did a pretty good job. Good questions. I think one of the questions that come up is why should I use an implementer versus doing it myself? Because we're not cheap, and it comes down to ROI. And the ROI comes from two places. One, you're going to do it better, and then the other is you're going to do it faster. So, at the end of the day, the way that I measure the success that I'm having is in the growth of the companies, but ultimately it comes down to, what is this company worth? What was it worth when we started? What is it worth when we're done? By the time that, because I don't work with them forever, like you, I work with you for what, about a year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah.
And, typically it's about 2 years, and then I kind of ride off into the sunset and they've got it and they take it from there.
I mean, I still bug you sometimes.
All the time, but it's fine. I love it. It's that ROI, and the real payback is the value of the business. You're going to get when you compare the incremental value, because you're going to get some increase in the value of the business just by self-implementing. Just read the book and do the tools, but you're not going to do it as well as if you do it with an implementer. So it's that delta, and what's the impact that has on the value of the business. And when you look at it from that perspective, what it costs to have an implementer is a drop in the bucket compared to what that impact can be.
Yeah, I would agree. We tried to self-implement, didn't go well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a very significant percentage of the companies I've worked with started with self-implementation.
Yeah, we do a ton of HubSpot training and implementation. We're certified partners with HubSpot. Not to change the subject, but we see the same thing over and over and over. They'll buy the software, they'll try to do it themselves. They realize they did about 10% of what's possible, and it took about 200% too long. And they'll reach out to us, and we start poking holes in things, asking the right questions, and get them up and running. So self-implementation is always a challenge if you're in unfamiliar territory. I could totally see that.
I had one client that I worked with. We did the first 3 sessions over 2 months, which is the startup piece of EOS. Yeah. And at the end of those 3 sessions, he said, we got more done in 2 months of working with you than we would have done in 2 years on our own.
Yeah. One thing I got to say I appreciated about you during that time is I'd always try to pull you in the weeds with me. Like, what's your opinion on this? You're like, I'm not here to give opinions. I'm just here to make sure you follow the process. Yeah. That was your $1 million line.
Do you remember my go-to line on that? I'm just a dumb guy with a marker.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. And horrible handwriting, by the way.
Really bad.
Yeah.
It's gotten better.
Has it?
It really has. I actually had...
Even on a dry erase board?
Yeah, it's still not good, but it's better than it used to be. I did have a client at the end of, after working with him for 2 years, I'm like, your handwriting's gotten better. I'm like, thank you. He goes, you still got a ways to go.
I might take you up to the whiteboard when we're done and give you a test. There you go. I'm not sure if I'm buying this.
Okay. Yeah. If I know it's coming, I'll do way better.
Okay. Yeah. If you know you're being graded.
Yeah. Yeah. If I'm just in a session it's up and down.
Michael, I really appreciate you doing this interview with me. Why don't you tell people where they could learn more about you and EOS and what you're doing in the EOS community?
All right. So if you want to learn more about EOS, you can go to the EOS Worldwide website. And if you want to learn more about me, if you do a search on there for Michael Halperin, I will come up. Or you can just go to eosworldwide.com/Michael.Halperin. And we call it a microsite that's on the EOS Worldwide page. Or you can just email me, michael.halperin@eosworldwide.com.
Awesome. Thank you for sitting down with me. I'm probably going to ask you to come back at some point in the future and do this all over again.
Awesome.
If you enjoyed the content today, please give us a like or follow. We're on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts these days. So I got to do my sign off. It's always great doing business with you. So thank you for coming in. Try not to get the microphone in my mouth here, and appreciate you.
I appreciate you too, Chris. Thank you.